Hello everyone, it's SpawnPoiint and today we're taking a closer look at the 2022 LG G2 OLED, which is LG's flagship TV this year. And on first impressions, this is the best and brightest OLED that I've ever used. We know it's got LG's latest Evo panel, every gaming feature that you need, and of course the incredible picture quality. But what makes this the best TV in 2022? Well, I've spent the last 2 weeks watching movies and using it with the PlayStation 5, racking up over 100 hours so far. So hopefully my review today will give you some idea on just how good this TV is, and of course how it compares to the C1 and the C2 OLEDs. And I wanted to mention that Box very kindly loaned me this TV so I could make today's video. This is not sponsored, but I have linked to their site below if you want to check them out. Let's talk about the picture quality. Well, after watching about 10 movies and dozens of hours of gaming over the last couple of weeks, it's fair to say that the G2 is absolutely stunning. That 4K resolution paired with the self-lighting pixels gives us an incredible contrast and those perfect black levels. Then there's the color reproduction and the overall image quality. Everything that I've watched or played just looks great. But that sounds a lot like every OLED TV that we've seen in the last 5 years. Well, what makes the G2 different is now that it has a heatsink. This allows the TV to actually be brighter than any other OLED TV that we've had before, maxing out at 1000 nits peak brightness. And coming from using last year's C1 OLED, I didn't think I would notice much of a difference. Well, I was wrong. As soon as I turned this on, it was noticeably brighter than the C1. Not only does this mean that the overall picture is brighter, but the image looks so much better. The highlights are elevated but not washed out, and the colours really pop. This gives the entire image and screen a more vibrant look without compromising on those black levels. Now of course HDR content looks great on here, and this is where you'll really notice the peak brightness. So anything with the Dolby Vision or an HDR logo. Most games also support HDR now. You're able to turn this on in the console settings to make the most out of the TV. Now not everything is in HDR, there's also still a lot of SDR content out there to watch. And from what I've seen so far, the G2 does an insane job of showing a relatively clear picture. So normally SDR content looks quite noisy or grainy, but the A9 Gen 5 chip seems to clear that up and leave us with a pretty decent image. But if you want to be blown away by the picture quality, just stick any HDR animated movie on. So I mentioned that I watched about 10 movies on here so far, and that's no exaggeration. When I test these TVs out, they literally become my main TV for the 2 weeks for the whole family. Well, over the last couple of weeks, I've watched a mixture of content to test it out, and there's not a single time where I felt this TV is lacking in terms of the picture quality. During the day, it's bright enough to see what's on the screen, there's no compromises here, and at night where you're more likely to notice issues with the dark scenes in the movie, again, it's been perfect. The only issue that I've personally found with this TV is the fact that it's only a 65-inch model instead of the 77-inch that I'm used to. The picture quality isn't the problem here, it's the overall enjoyment of the larger screen that I'm used to. It's safe to say that a 65-inch is just too small for my room. Okay, so not everyone will want to use a TV for gaming, but the G2 just so happens to be one of, if not the best gaming TVs out there. It quite literally ticks every single box for the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. That includes 4K, 120Hz and the variable refresh rate. So it's packing the same features from this year's C2 and technically more than last year's C1 and G1. We've got 4 HDMI 2.1 ports, and these can handle 4K and 120Hz. Not only that, but they are capable of 48 gigabits per second, which is up from last year's 40 gigabits per second. This gives us more bandwidth for gaming, although if you're on the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, you won't really see a difference. Now every game, whether it's a fast-paced FPS or a story-driven game, just looks insane on the G2. That extra brightness really shows here. In fact, I had to dial it back a little bit just so I could record this. The motion handling is on par with what we've seen before. It's very good, especially for gaming. Then we have the LG Game Optimizer mode, and this is an overlay that we get when pressing the settings button on the remote control. From here you can see the current frame rate, whether VRR is running, or you can go ahead and tweak the picture profiles. I tend to set this up when I get the TV, and then to be honest, I never use it again. And we can of course see the frame rate and the resolution of a game just by pressing the green button on the remote control multiple times. One thing to note, which might not be a big deal for most, is BFI or black frame insertion is no longer included at 120Hz, only at 60Hz now. Now you can enable OLED motion in the settings, which will help with the motion handling, but it will drastically reduce the brightness of the screen, although this doesn't work when VRR is enabled. But if you are looking for one of the best TVs out there for gaming on both the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X, you will struggle to beat this TV. So we've talked about the picture quality and just how nice this TV looks during the day and at night, but what's it like for viewing angles and reflections? So the viewing angles are insane. You can watch the G2 at pretty much any angle in your room and still get a perfect picture. This makes it ideal for rooms with off-center seating or where you cannot watch it straight on. But if there was one downside, one negative to this TV that's worth considering, that would be the reflections. Now this TV is glossy, and even with the tinted glass it's still very reflective. That means if you're going to be using this in a bright room with loads of windows, you will struggle to see what's on the screen. For me it's not a problem, as even with the windows to the side it's not super bright in here. But if I had a window directly opposite the TV, say it was behind my sofa, it would be almost impossible to watch without having to close the blinds or limit the light coming through. Everyone's rooms are obviously different, and if you watch it at night or you can control the amount of light coming into the room, the G2 will be perfect in those situations. When it comes to burn-in on the G2, well, I've obviously not experienced that at all, but that's no surprise as it is only 2 weeks old. Now, the new heatsink that's included with this model is supposed to help reduce the risk of damaging the screen, but I guess only time will tell. Personally, I've never experienced burn-in with any of the OLEDs or the plasmas that I used to have years ago. Even the C9 that I've got upstairs that is used daily by my children, there's no signs of burn-in. But to really keep your mind at rest, LG now provides a 5-year panel warranty on the G2. The first year gets you free parts and labour, while years 2 to 5 gets you just parts. Labour is not included. Now this is obviously a TV, and the chances of you using it as a productivity or work monitor is pretty slim, but there's nothing stopping you from using it this way if you wanted to. The colour reproduction of the screen is incredible, and if you wanted to use this for editing, you definitely could. Now although my MacBook Pro and the TV are capable of 120Hz, the HDMI port on the side of my Mac is actually limited to 60Hz. But that's not the TV's fault, that's on Apple. But even with the limitation, it's still obviously usable at 60Hz and it runs very smoothly. If you enable the PC mode on the input settings of the TV, it will reduce the input lag, because without that you're likely to notice a slight delay when moving the mouse around. But using this LG G2 as a monitor definitely has its downsides. One, there's no display port or USB-C on the TV. This means you cannot charge at the same time. Also, as mentioned, you won't get 120Hz via the HDMI port on the new MacBooks. Another thing is you cannot wake it from sleep. So if you wake your laptop or PC, it won't automatically wake the screen like a normal monitor does. You will need to switch it on manually. And finally, the ABL, or the auto brightness limiter. This isn't a huge problem, but if you're on a big bright screen for a long period of time, it will gradually reduce the brightness. Then as soon as you move the mouse or you change the page or browser, it will pop back to the full brightness again. And other features worth mentioning about the G2 is the fact it comes with AirPlay and various app integrations. So if you wanted to share your iPhone, iPad or even your MacBook to the TV without cables, well you can. Just hit the AirPlay icon and within a few seconds it's done. There is a noticeable input delay doing it this way, so you wouldn't want to use this for work, but sharing images or your screen is absolutely fine. Not only that, but it also works with Amazon Alexa and Google Home. So you can integrate it with your existing apps, rooms or routines. Or if you wanted to, you could use the hands-free assistance for searching for movies or TV shows. And still, one of my favourite features is the HomeKit integration. So once set up, you can turn the TV on and off from the control center on your phone. This might seem a little gimmicky at first, but pair this with a routine and you can turn all of your lights on and off in one go. So the LG G2 does actually have inbuilt down-firing speakers, making up a 4.2 channel setup. These support Dolby Atmos and LG's AI Sound Pro. Now TV speakers will only ever sound okay, but these are without doubt the clearest TV speakers I've ever heard. You can change the sound settings to see which one works for you, but take a listen to this.
To fail all the same.
But if you are spending this much on a TV, I would still recommend getting yourself some external speakers or at least a soundbar. Sound makes a huge difference to the whole experience when watching movies. As well as the internal speakers, the G2 does also support Bluetooth audio. So if you've got some Bluetooth headphones, all you need to do is turn them on and pair them with your TV. And once that's done and it's set up, you can now enjoy your movies or TV shows whenever you'd like, without annoying your neighbours or your family late at night. Okay, so picture settings are one of the most frequently asked questions I get when I show these TVs. I'm not sure if it's because you want to compare or you think mine look good or bad, but here they are anyway. Just make sure you pause it if you need them. So we've got the picture settings here for SDR content. I always start with ISF Expert Bright and then I tweak it from here. Next are my HDR picture settings. I really only use these for Netflix or the other streaming apps. Again, these are just minor tweaks to the default settings, as for me they are pretty good out of the box. And finally, the gaming settings. So I probably play 90% of the time on the PS5 as the Xbox doesn't get much playtime at the moment. But these are the settings that I use for both of those consoles. And as for the overall look of the G2, well, it's slick, minimal, and has that awesome gallery edition design to it. The brushed metal frame gives it a picture frame experience, and it's one of the nicest looking TVs that you can buy right now. Now, as this TV is designed to be wall mounted, you can either use the provided bracket or any VESA compatible bracket. I'm using one here that tilts and swivels. It's not as flush as I'd like, but it's enough for me. But then of course you could also add a tabletop stand, although I've seen mixed reviews on just how stable they are, and if you are going for a G2, you're likely going to wall mount it anyway. Well, the LG G2 is running the latest WebOS 2022 version, so this is a slight step up from the WebOS 6.0 we had on last year's models. With this, it comes with a snappier UI, multiple user profiles, and more ads. Even though I have an Apple TV hooked up, I still often use the native apps on the TV, things like Netflix, Prime, and even Apple TV. They always load fast, and we get the full 4K HDR quality on anything that we watch. Now, you might be wondering how the 2022 G2 compares to the C2 and last year's C1. Well, now that I've used them all, I will give you my honest opinion on each one. So the 2021 G1 is cheaper, has the same great 120Hz 4K capability, and actually has the BFI if that's something that you want or need from 120Hz content. Overall, the picture quality is very similar, but it's not going to get quite as bright as the G2. The menus are also a little more laggy in comparison. Then there's the 2022 C2, and that's even cheaper again. Has a tabletop stand, the new WebOS, 4 48GB per second HDMI ports, and an Evo panel. And then there's last year's C1, which is what I've been using. This is the cheapest out of the lineup and is really hard to beat. You're getting probably 95% of the same features and picture quality for a fraction of the cost. This, in my eyes, is the best value for money right now. But you are obviously missing out on that brighter screen. But if you're after the best TV that you can buy right now that you want to use for movies and gaming, maybe even some productivity, the LG G2 is 100% the one to go for. It's the most expensive, but you are getting more features than last year's G1 and C1, plus a brighter panel and that 5-year warranty. It also looks a lot nicer than the C2 with this gallery design. But ultimately, you cannot go wrong with any of the 2021 or 2022 G or C series models. Just stick with your budget and size that you wanted to go for and then go from there. And now for myself, going back to the 77-inch C1 is going to be tough. I've definitely been spoiled with this LG G2, but saying that, I am looking forward to the larger screen as this 65-inch just feels way too small. Let me know which model and size you would choose in the comments, and I will give you a thumbs up for staying right till the end. And if you did enjoy today's video, check out my LG G2 unboxing video next, as it covers everything that comes with this awesome TV. Well, thanks for watching, please like, sub, and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time.